Milo, is that you?
There, I think I got it. Okay, Dave, I just hit the record button. It is time now for Fireside Chat number 19.
19? I can't believe it's number 19.
19. We had a
We have a 20th anniversary coming up.
I know, yeah. You know what? This is the absolute God's truth. I'm not even embellishing this. Another day at my side gig down at the hospital in Toronto. And I'm coming back, and I was not. It's not that it's not fun. It's draining, right? It's not that it's not fun. It's just draining, and they're very pleasant. The people are very pleasant. They're very nice. There's none of that. But I'm coming up the highway, and it's rush hour, so I'm thinking, I don't know how people do this every day. That I don't get. I've been so fortunate that I have had not to do that rush hour thing. And I'm coming up the highway, and I'm thinking, I don't think I can do Fireside tonight. I just don't think I got it. I don't know if I can do it. And I thought, I got to be honest with myself. If I start, I bet you I'll feel a lot better when I get to the end of it. It always gives me energy. So that's what we're doing. We're doing Fireside number 19.
19. Well, I'm as always, it's a thrill to be part of it, and I'm even happier hearing this made you feel a little better already. That's great.
Yeah. It's always fun to. I even made a little list of topics.
Wow.
Do you have any particular things you want to talk about tonight?
Well, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I got some things, but we also, I didn't realize it was number 19. I got to start counting myself. So I think let's let it flow as we always do. You and I always have a good conversation. Sometimes it's more confrontational. Sometimes it's more laid back. Sometimes it's both at the same time. But I always learn from it, and it always improves my perspective. I was just talking to my wife tonight about how much I value these conversations and our conversations that led to this. Some of the offline stuff early on, and it continues. That there's your perspective on the hobby and on life. Someone that's almost 20 years ahead of me in the whole game has been a really valuable perspective, and I've learned a lot from it, and I appreciate that. So I'm very much happy to be here, and glad to see where it takes us.
Well, and I said in the last one, which was released 2 or 3 weeks ago, I said I'm more of a guy that has to be holding the steering wheel, but I said in the last one, I feel like I'm your spotter at the Daytona 500.
Yeah, I've been thinking about that analogy actually consistently. That's one of the things I sort of wanted to talk about, because that's an interesting shift in gears for you to continue with the car theme, and it's one that I've benefited from, and it's a fascinating conversation. I think provided this ends up on the free channel like the last one did, I think there's a lot to draw from for everyone for this. Well, this is as the hobby continues, the walls are coming down, and that's one of the things I do want to touch on tonight. We've touched on it before, but we're sort of at a new paradigm now, thanks to the events of the last couple of days.
Yeah,
and we'll get there.
The reason we know it's on the free channel is because when this particular podcast is finished and we're finished recording, it would not surprise me if that when next time you're working on your layout, you might be working with your Rapido Trains.
Your fast track to model railroading fun.
Rapido Trains, your fast track to model railroading fun.
Man, those I was doing a podcast the other day, and I had Lauren James with Otter Valley Railway. I had Matt Dowd, who owns Resourced Rails. Do you know anything about that?
I do.
Okay. And then I had a fellow named Ron Kleiss, who owns Mind Mount Models.
My models, and Ron's been here on the OC several times. Another friend of our New Jersey community here.
And so I had these three different levels, a guy that manufactures kits, a guy that's selling refurbished brass, and a guy that's a retailer. And Lauren was telling us, Otter Valley, he ordered basically 1,000 pieces of the new Rapido Trains.
Your fast track to model railroading fun.
If it's N, if it's H-O, the fast track is Rapido.
Our GP9 RM. And he
Correct.
1,000 pieces he ordered.
Yeah, but Lionel, this is where the hobby's going. The reason Lauren is willing to take that kind of a risk is because he's seen what's happened with Rapido products as time has gone on here. And the fact that they're making things that quietly almost everyone is familiar with and almost everybody wants one. Even if you don't model the CN, that rebuilt GP9 is awesome. It's like the old CP-RS-18U.
Yeah.
I mean, you can almost justify having one just because of how cool it is.
Well, those RS-18Us, I have two of those sitting in Lauren's shop waiting for me to pick up just because they're cool. Period.
I have one for the OC. The Onondaga cutoff, I think, and this is one of those funny college stories. I used to have when I went to Syracuse, I got lucky with my freshman year placement, and I ended up living in Lawrence and Hall, which is a high rise, 21 stories or so on the west side of the campus at Syracuse. So west of my dorm, so basically I was on the west side of a west building. And beyond the building, there was a parking lot, and the land went down to the Lackawanna Main Line, which was at that time New York, Susquehanna, and Western, still is today. And beyond that was I-81, and then across the valley, you kind of looked out across the whole valley, the Onondaga Valley, out towards Solvay. The city was to the north, to the right, but you got beautiful sunset views. It was a great. I'm really grateful for that dorm placement my freshman year, and you could see and hear Susquehanna trains up and down that line. And there was a local SY1, the Syracuse crew that would either start in Syracuse and go down to Binghamton a couple days a week, or vice versa, come back up from Binghamton back to Syracuse. And there was also the stack trains that would come and go at that time. That was where Conrail and Susquehanna had their interchange for their intermodal business, was west of Syracuse. So those trains would come through as well. And a lot of them were at night. It wasn't always, and I was a class, it wasn't something I always saw. One time at night, I think SY1 came north with just a rat bag nest of power. Susquehanna had their own locomotives, but it wasn't always their locomotives on these trains. Something would break down, or they would have to borrow from somebody else if their power was busy doing a different train. And I'm almost positive one of these trains one night had one of the Binghamton-based RS-18Us in the 1990s. And so when Rapido came out with the RS-18U, and I saw how beautifully it was done, all the features, the lights, the lighted control stand, I said, I have to get one of these for the OC. Like even if this was only a once or twice in a lifetime experience in Syracuse, on the OC, it's going to be occasional because it's just too cool to avoid. It's a great product, and Rapido is just hit after hit after hit.
Yeah, that's the thing right now. I mean, the hats off. I got to get Jason Tron back on here, but hats off. Oh, and I got a really good topic for us to talk about that most people would think we would talk about behind the scenes, but I got I want your advice on something. I'm
always happy to be part of Jason's talks too. If you ever need somebody to be part of that, because I am so impressed with what they're doing these days.
Okay. Well, I wrote that down, advice. But let's not get off this topic about the hobby and what it was you said, because when I was having this discussion with Lauren and Matt and Ron, I went back to my old thing, just like people used to say, oh, the hobby's dying. I'm the exact opposite, right? I keep saying this hobby's growing like crazy. And Lauren and Matt were more like, well, I don't think it's growing, but it's not shrinking, it's changing. And Ron was saying it's growing. And I can't see how anybody can think anything other than the hobby's growing. I just think it's growing like crazy.
I think it is too. And I don't think when people say, oh, it's not growing, it's changing. look, there's no question that a good chunk of the model railroaders that got us through the 80s and 90s are now in their 80s and 90s, right? And a lot of them are aging out of the hobby, or they're passing on to their next chapter. Now this is something right now that's, hey, old man Reaper has 100% success rate on the long term. He's very good at what he does.
He's gonna be pissed when I show up.
Yeah, I believe he already is. But that being said, so yeah, the hobby is certainly changing, but you can't argue that it's not growing. The part that's shrinking is the train set community. It's the grade crossing rail fan community, and it's the people that are the reason the hobby is growing is the people that are involved in it are getting younger, and they're spending money.
Yeah, the people are getting younger. I'm convinced that the medium age of this hobby is getting lower. Maybe not really fast, but it's definitely going down.
It's going down, and it's a long curve, right? This isn't something you can track, in my opinion, on a month-to-month or even a year-to-year basis. It's not something that you can track, in my opinion, on magazine subscriptions or website clicks, because like it always has, this hobby cuts across economics, it cuts across race, it cuts across gender. There is a largely untapped market, and this is something that G4, our friend John, he I should say Z, is a member of a growing part of this hobby, right? Where the passion for a group of younger people than us is transit. It's commuter trains, Amtrak, long distance stuff like Amtrak, and the Canadian, but also light rail, right? The whole idea of urban mass transit, subways. There's, you look at Rapido starting to do stuff like the BART train set in the Bay Area by San Francisco. MTH for years has done subways in O-gauge every once in a while, and you see those on O-gauge layouts. I think there's a growing passion for the things that people see today, the things that young people see today and think are cool. And that includes transit.
Is this a thought? Is this a legitimate thought? As you're saying that, I'm thinking to myself, there's been many hobbies throughout the years of collecting stamps, collecting coins. For a while, my wife and I were in this collecting plates, that people would
Sure.
Art plates, and people collect art. People
baseball
cards. And I think what part of how the hobby of model railroading is going to grow, it's going to become more of a collector. There's going to be a whole new segment that's going to, well, it's not a new segment. There's already been collectors, but I think there's going to be room for a part in the hobby where you got to have one of these RS-18s. You got to have one of these GP9 RMs. It's part of your collection. I think.
I agree. And I think that where that is so powerful is through internet marketing. It was back in the day, 1940s and 50s and 60s, it was the Lionel catalog or the display shelf at the hobby shop. That's how people communicated. Maybe you saw it in a magazine if you subscribed to a magazine. But Lionel dealers, whether it was the local drugstore or a full-on hobby shop, it was a first-hand introduction to these trains, and trains were in the forefront of the national mentality in the United States and in Canada. Everyone knew someone that worked for a railroad. Railroads at one point employed 1 in 10 people. Railroads are rail-related industries, employed 1 in 10 employed people in North America, which is a staggering number of people. Millions and millions and millions, right? So pretty spectacular numbers. Today, it's a different game. I mean, there's less than 200,000 people in North American railroading. There's a lot less railroad mileage. There's less railroads. There's many less Class 1 railroads. So the whole thing is more out of sight. But where it's growing is the internet. And companies like Rapido that push their product on the internet, Scale Trains releases on the internet, right? Aurora Models, when they come out with the new boxcar, it's on the internet. These companies all release something, and immediately most of the young people in the hobby know about it. Like within minutes. And to the point where you can give real-time feedback to some of these companies. And I saw on trainorders.com that Jason is going to add a different number series to the new C36-7 announcement based on feedback within the first 2 weeks. So they have a huge announcement. They roll it out. Everyone's excited. Handful of people are frustrated because it didn't have the right number for their era. Jason himself responds on train orders and says, we're adding it. I mean, can you imagine that 20 years ago? No way. And what does that do? That shows a bunch of young people, these guys are listening. They want my feedback. I can have an effect on the next release. And you watch this thing start to take off. And it's building a collector mentality because all this stuff is too cool to let go away. I think I'm thoroughly excited about it. I think again, I've been saying this for years, but it continues to be true. The best is yet to come for this hobby.
I don't think we can even imagine at this point where we're headed.
I don't think so, because we couldn't have imagined it 15 years ago.
Isn't the C36-7 the one you've been whining about for months? Years.
The close cousin of the one I've been whining about for years.
Which is the one you want?
Well, the C36-7 is. I can tell you that there'll be a mortgage payment going to Rapido from me for C36-7s. The one that I think is a defining locomotive for Conrail and for anybody that models the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s in North America, because they ran through everywhere, is the C30-7A, which is very similar, very, very similar, but different enough that it's worth a separate release, in my opinion. And Rapido has been excited about the whole idea. I think the C37 and the C36-7 have sold very well. And just judging from their Facebook posts, it looks like that's rolling in the way that it should, which I'm not surprised about at all, because Rapido makes a quality product. This is a huge vacuum in the market were these -7 locomotives. And Jason took a risk on this. His team delivered a great design, and I think the hobby is going to benefit. I think Rapido is going to do very, very well on these engines. But the C30-7A is something that almost every Conrail fan, and a lot of collectors are going to be very interested to get. It's like the RS18U or the GP9R. These are railroad specific locomotives.
And what was it? The A. What did the A signify?
So, General Electric, when they had a lot of product related issues in the early 70s, and they were losing badly to the electromotive division of General Motors, EMD, we all call it. And as EMD got better, GE was really struggling. So EMD in the early 1970s came out with this -2 line, which basically was a customer and mechanical railroad department mandate, or desire, and probably not a mandate, but a customer desire to improve the locomotives. We can make the electronics modular. We can make this easier to maintain. We can make this better labeled. We can fix this issue for the crews. We can make this quieter, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, raise the horsepower and make it more fuel efficient too. And GE woke up and said, look, we need to catch up. So they did their own customer visits and customer rides and came up with a whole list of improvements they could make. And they decided to call it the new series. And because it was released in 1977 in the catalog for GE, became the -7 series. So the -7 series was an improvement upon the existing Universal series, the U-boats that we all remember from the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And the Dash 7s had better electronics. They had, components rearranged to reduce maintenance. They were more fuel efficient. And as time went on, GE changed this product line sort of on the fly to make it better and better. The C30-7 was one of the original releases in 1977. A bunch of railroads bought it, but it had some problems. And by the time Conrail was ready to purchase locomotives in the early 1980s, they'd bought only 10 C30-7s. They realized they weren't as good as the SD40-2s in fuel efficiency and maintenance cost. So Conrail kind of took a pass on any more C30-7s. But when they were ready to order more locomotives and they wanted to order some GEs to keep EMD honest, suddenly GE said, we're not making the C30-7 anymore. And Conrail said, well, look, we need a 3,000 horsepower 6-axle locomotive. And so GE said, well, we have a 4-axle version that we've called the B for, B is 2, right? AB, 1, 2, 3. So the B 3,000 horsepower -7, and they put an A after it, the B37A. Another debate is whether you say the dash or not. Some rail fans do, some rail fans don't. But the B30-7A or the B37A, it was a 3,000 horsepower locomotive, but instead of having 16 cylinders on the diesel motor that generated 3,000 horsepower through the electronic system, GE had refined the platform so they could do it with 12 cylinders, which of course means a lot less fuel. It means higher compression, higher temperatures. You need better cooling, but the radiators had developed to the point where they could get away with it. Electronics helped with it. So GE changed their 3,000 horsepower platform to be 12 cylinders. And Conrail said, well, we need a 6-axle version. And GE said, well, how about we build you a C30-7A with 6 axles, 3 axles per truck, so C. And Conrail said, okay. So, long story short, Conrail in 1984 took delivery of 50 C30-7As. But by the time the next railroad wanted a new locomotive, the recession had really cut in, 84, 85. There was less locomotive orders, and GE by that point had reiterated the next version of their electrical system, and that became the Dash 8, which was largely released in 1987 and 1988. And the Dash 8, that changed. That was really the first series that put GE on top of the locomotive manufacturing business in North America. So what's unique about the C30-7A is that it's a Conrail-only locomotive, very visually similar to the things that Rapido's already made, the C30-7, the C36-7, but some key differences on the long hood. And because they were some of the newest GEs at the time, and they were universally used around Conrail, they ran through all over the country. Almost every main line saw C30-7A run-throughs. And so, thanks to modern tooling, my understanding is they can make that change without too much additional work on their end. And there's a very good chance that in the future we're going to see a C30-7A in HO scale and plastic.
And I wonder what layout they'll use to display it for their video.
I hope they use the OC.
Well, and if they do, I'd better be there for them making of that video.
Well, I'm going to offer it for all of these big Dash 7s. I think there could be a whole series. We could have some fun with it.
How come? Because the C36-7 was 3,700 horsepower. Like, why didn't Conrail want 3,700 horsepower? Why did they want 3,000?
They actually ordered them around the same time for different services. So the C36-7s with higher horsepower were ordered more for mineral service. At least this is based on my limited research. So none of this stuff is written in stone. And I would be open to corrections on this if anybody wants to drop an email to us here at modelerslife@gmail.com. But at the time, before microprocessors and computers really took over the 6-axle locomotive platform, before you had all the advanced computer control and wheel slip traction and adhesion technology that you have in today's engines, Dash 8s, 9s, all the ACs, all the GEVOs, and all the modern locomotives, different locomotives were built for different parts of the system. And railroads put a lot of mechanical engineering effort into maximizing fuel efficiency and maintenance cost, because every mile costs a certain amount. If you can knock a cent or two off each mile a locomotive ran from a cost standpoint, you do that for 30 years or 20 years, and you suddenly have saved millions of dollars, because these engines do millions of miles a year.
Now that reminds me, I want to get Rich, the whiz, on here and ask him just exactly how much fuel was used on that 40th anniversary train.
You're going to know. Yeah, but I
love you, Rich.
The idea with the C30-7A was that it was really geared towards the lower grade routes on the Albany division, but also the higher grade routes on the Boston and Albany, east of Selkirk. So these engines, all 50 of them for some time, were based out of Selkirk. They basically took over operations on the Boston line, east of Selkirk, and then were quite common on other lines out of Selkirk, the river line down to New Jersey, and the Chicago line west to Utica, Syracuse, Buffalo, and points west. So the C36-7, on the other hand, was system-wide, and you saw those a lot in mineral service early on. And then as time went on, they ended up in general service as well. So both very useful models for Conrail modelers, both distinctive models. They definitely fill different roles. And the fact that we're in an era where a major manufacturer can produce them to this fidelity with sound, lights, high quality plastic shells, it's a dream come true. I mean, it's just a different era of model railroading. And I think it's one that behooves collectors. I agree with you. I think that's going to be a growing field.
I absolutely think that's going to be a growing field, because I think people like to display things and like to collect. And this is a time. I mean, it's funny listening to you talk about this is the golden age of model railroading. I know a guy that when he was 47 said the same damn thing, and it was me. And back then, Rapido Trains didn't even exist. Rapido Trains.
Correct. Your fast track to model railroading fun.
Rapido Trains, your fast track to model railroading fun.
And we thought.
How come you say every time I say Rapido Trains?
It's actually that's been pointed out to me by people that I know really well.
Well, I hope I fall into that category too. I think we're pretty good friends.
Oh yeah, point. No. Specifically, people that I've spent 45 years with, they say, you say too much. And I'm like, yeah.
Well.
Do
you say Rapido before it, though, when you're just hanging out at home?
Exactly. Doing this podcast is like way too much fun.
It's fun.
Oh my God, it is fun. It is just, I felt like crap today. I literally felt like crap.
I'm sorry.
No. Look, I don't. That's a.
And I know. Look, I know you don't want my pity. I'm not giving you any freaking pity. I'm just saying, it's a bummer when you don't feel good.
Yeah, but it's
a statement of fact. It's not a sympathy card. It's not a get out of jail free card. I'm not. It is what it is.
Yeah.
But I think the fact that you're fighting against some chronic pain, and you're fighting, the usual cadre of health issues that you've been fighting for years. Look, you are doing what it takes to continue to be alive and contribute. And what you're contributing, I think, has value to a lot of people.
Right.
Are you going to have your ups and downs? You're going to tick some people off? Yeah. I mean, that's
life. What I do.
It's life. It's also life. It's not just what you do. I tried to do it less than you try to do it, and I still managed to do it. So what are you going to do? It is what it is.
So, yeah. So, I mean, doing these podcasts is a lot of fun. We got to get off this topic because we've already chewed up 30 minutes, and I got another topic I want to talk about. Do you have something else you want to talk about? Or we want to talk about life, too, but I think that always ends up coming into all the conversations anyways.
Yeah, fair enough. Go ahead.
I don't think we've talked about your new book enough. I'm
excited about the new book.
Yeah, when does it come out?
Well, there's been a major change over.
Well, yeah, that's what I was going to segue into that because.
Yeah. So my understanding is that we're still on track for later this year. It's going to be a fall fall-ish release, is my understanding.
And it's about designing model railroad yards.
Design, yeah, it's the yard design and operation for model railroading. So this is going to be a fun piece. It's all been submitted. All the photographs are there. The sidebars, which were written by a bunch of railroad professionals and names in the hobby, some of those are there. My whole manuscript is there. And the way Kalmbach has done that for 90 years is they take in all this information and you tell them where you want the photos, and then they assemble the whole thing. They do a copy edit, and they place the photographs with the text, and they line it all up. They put everything where they think they want it. Then you get to take a look at proofs, and when you proof it, they call it a last look. It's a last chance to make any edits. You can brighten photographs or darken photographs. You can change captions. You can correct typos. You can delete a paragraph and insert a paragraph, as long as you don't change the whole overall feel of things.
So does that come to you via paper, or does it come to you via computer?
This day and age, it's a PDF, an Adobe Acrobat document that comes, but it's encoded so that only you can read it.
So
because they don't want to have it be inadvertently
Sure.
shared.
So when you talk about, photographs might need to be lightened or darkened, is there any way that that your particular screen is the way it should be? Like that sounds to me like a pretty high end part of publishing, where, you're looking at a photograph. I mean, and you're okay, I think this one's a bit too bright, but it could be that your screen is too bright.
That is correct. You need to calibrate your screen before you do one of these final proofs. And I found that out the hard way the first time.
And do you calibrate it to some sort of standards that they have, or?
Yeah, if you jump, they have a standard that you can use. But if you actually jump online, this is one of those things that you can Google. And there's a bunch of manufacturers' recommended calibrations for these screens. And you can actually go online, and there's instructions on how to do it for your particular device, because every device is different. Every device is different. So it's actually an interesting process. And interestingly, mine was too bright. And so the pictures came out a little bit dark in the first run of my first Signals book. But with the second printing, they can adjust that, and they were able to brighten a bunch of the ones up. They let me do some edits for that second printing. And so the second printing, which is the one that's available now over at Kalmbach Media, trains.com, and soon to be the new publishing company.
Is it still trains.com?
It should be still at trains.com. I think till at least July is what I understand.
Okay.
Yep, they're gonna. That whole brand is moving over.
We'll get into that a little bit in a minute. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so they send it to you, and you go through the whole thing and
the whole thing. Yep. It's basically, rather than having a layout project going on right now, rather than having another article cooking on my computer, or taking more pictures, or planning a railfan trip or whatever, I kind of hold my hobby time available until 6 or 7 p.m. every night, waiting for an email that will have, okay, Dave, time for the last look. We need it back in 48 hours. We need it back in 1 week, or whatever Jeff Wilson, my editor for this book, will tell me. And you dedicate yourself to that. That's your project. That's your free time for the next couple of weeks, is getting it back to him, and then usually proofing it one more time to make sure that you can get anything in at the last second if you can. So it's a process. But the next book, having done the Signal book first, which itself was sort of a dream come true. I never would have imagined myself writing a book, as we talked about back when that was going on. Yeah, that was just an unbelievable opportunity. And then to have the opportunity to do a second one, I mean, only authors do that. That's not something I ever consider myself to be part of that crowd. And here we are, a few months, it really should be sometime late in 2024, that suddenly there's ads on Facebook and online and in Model Railroader and on trains.com with a new company at that point, but the brand will be the same. It's this, at this point, it's the same people. Eric White is the editor. His email address is even switched at this point, and he's still the editor, which is really exciting. I think that bodes well for the magazine.
So what do you mean? His email address is, what is it now? Well, you can't say it on.
It's changed over. It used to be, at Kalmbach.com, and now it's going to be at Firecrown.
This is a question now. This is be a fun thing for people to realize again, that we don't, when we do these, we don't rehearse or anything. We just we fly it out there. I was actually having this thought the other day, because we had a bet where I said to you, model railroader won't last.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking to myself, well, Kalmbach's gone. So did I win the bet? Because I kept telling you Kalmbach's not going to last. The family's going to...
No. You said...
I kept saying the family's going to sell the company.
You said model railroader.
Yeah.
Is not, and you should have just said kept the Kalmbach.
Yeah.
Then you would have won the bet.
I'm actually, I think I have high hopes for this. I got more to tell about that, and I think we have high hopes for this.
I'm an optimist with this kind of thing. And you look at the additional resources that were made available for railroad model craftsmen. Our friend Otto, who's the editor over there at RMC, has created a beautiful magazine. I mean, it's an incredible magazine. The paper is beautiful. The printing is sharp. It feels like a quality publication. It's thick. It's heavy. It's got advertising in it from Rapido. It's got advertising in it from a bunch of cutting edge companies. It's got great feature articles. It's got in-depth articles. There's articles that are 10 pages long. It's a great magazine. And in its last days at Karstens, it didn't look like it does now. It was a struggling magazine in some ways down the stretch at Karstens. And when you look at Otto, who hung in there for that transition, which is a tough transition, real tough transition. I mean, this is your livelihood, and you're talking about shifting lanes. It's a whole different highway. So it's a leap of faith, and Otto hung in there. He made it happen, and it's a thrill to watch how great that magazine has become. It has become absolutely a pillar of the hobby, especially for serious model railroaders now. So I'm an optimist. I believe that model railroader has the opportunity here to prove itself. It's still one of the most recognizable brands in all of railroading, including prototype railroading. It's still a hobby with a huge amount of name recognition. It's, this brand, it's most likely to be available at the corner drugstore even today. So look, there's always, you can't predict the future. Nobody can, but I can tell you that I think this is a good time to be optimistic. I think Eric White is the right guy to manage this transition. I think he sees the hobby through clear eyes. He's a regular operator at a number of layouts around the country. He travels to these operating centers.
Yeah, he's a throwback. He's a throwback to Andy's brand deal.
That's correct. And Andy was a visionary. I think Andy presided over an era of growth in the hobby when operations was in its infancy. Well, operations now, look, it's only 10 or 12% of the hobby, at least according to some of the last surveys that I've seen, in the magazines. But I'm going to argue that it's 10 or 12% that spends a whole lot more money than 10 or 12% of the total spending on the hobby.
I think operations what I think has happening, part of that, and we got to get back to the book. I don't want to pass over the book.
Yes, I agree. Well, the book is a resource for operations, but finish your sentence.
I think there's more operating layouts coming online all the time. And I know that people talk about the small layouts and the shelf layouts and that, and I would actually like to build one, but we'll see how that goes. But I think there's more operating layouts coming online, and I think it's partly because it's easier to build a layout now. It's easier. The materials have improved so much that it's not that hard to build a scenic model railroad. Or it's not that hard
with good running detailed models on top of that. So, Tony Custer and the early visionary Jim Hediger with his Ohio Southern, Alan McClelland. These guys had to take an Athearn or an old Atlas model and add the MU hoses, add the windshield wipers, put a headlight in. They'd have to put the wheels that could run and not get filthy. They'd have to, in a lot of cases, custom paint all their stuff. Look, all of that is a fun part of the hobby. I do all that stuff today. I still do because it's fun. But the ability to jump over to, Otter Valley Trains and order some GP9s, the ability to jump on, Midwest Model Railroad.
Okay, if you went to Midwest Model Railroad, would you buy Rapido Trains?
I would buy Rapido Trains because they're your fast track to model railroading fun. There you go. And I actually, when I was at Midwest Model Trains, guess what I bought?
Rapido Trains.
If it's N, if it's H-O, the fast track is Rapido.
Because they're your fast track to model railroading fun.
Beautiful.
The people are going to get tired.
No, they're not.
Mr. Jingles, well done.
We have like 4 different jingles.
I know, but it's going to be quite a bit of interruptions because Mr. Jingles did a good job.
We do it. We interrupt for a bit and then we go back to talking. I just want to make sure. I'm anal about making sure that Jason gets his money's worth.
Well, and as well you should be. That's what a good host does. But I think the ability to have an operating layout is greater now than it ever has been because it's not fun to run trains if your trains don't run well. We've heard this in the Great Model Railroads magazine articles for years. We've seen it in operations. You've heard about it on Onondaga Cutoff Facebook Live stuff. You've heard it if you're a member of my Patreon channel. You've heard it there. It's not fun to operate if the trains don't operate well. But what these manufacturers have done is they've tapped into technology that makes almost everything run like a Swiss watch. It's unbelievable, the quality that comes out of this stuff. And so what that allows us to do is start to focus more on other parts of the hobby, like weathering or like layout design. And that's where I'm so excited for the yard book. I think the yard book is going to be a step forward because it looks at what Andy Sporandio did. And the fact that I'm writing a yard book in the footprints of Andy Sporandio is what? This is like a childhood hero of mine. I don't even know how to put it into words. I'm completely honored to even have been asked to think about doing this project, let alone waiting for the proofs to come in, the fact that it's going to last for the new Kalmbach is, the Fire Crown. It's even transcending arguably the brand that built the hobby.
So what
is going? It's just fantastic.
All right, so let's get into specifics here because we gotta sell this book. I want to sell it as much as the first one, The Signals. I was very proud that we sold it. So specifically, how many? Like the book is about creating yards, big and small.
It's what it's meant to be is a resource that opens the eyes of every model railroader, whether you're a seasoned veteran or somebody just getting started or somebody that's never built a model before in their life. This book is your resource to understand how yards came to be, why they exist, why different kinds of yards may look different to you, and how they can be designed and operated as well. So, like the Signal book, what this book does is it provides ideas and resources for you to understand where else to go if you need more information. This book will make you comfortable with the concept of yards on your railroad, how they can be designed to fill spaces on your railroad, how they can be put in whatever space you've got available on your railroad, and how that's similar to the prototype. And what we do is we start by looking at prototypes. What's the history of the yard? How did the hump yard concept start, where trains are classified using gravity? What is flat switching? What are car floats? Why are passenger yards different than freight yards? Are they different, and why? We look briefly at engine facilities and where those might fit. We look at common things you need to avoid. What if you're building a yard of any type? What should you avoid to make sure that you're not shooting yourself in the foot in your design and in your operation? So this is a really comprehensive look at an introduction and a strategic plan for how yards can work with your model railroad. It's loaded with a bunch of photography, most of which has never been published before. It's going to have some plans and schematics that have never been published before. It's going to have multiple sidebars by professional railroaders. You're going to have sidebars by people like Mark Hemphill, who have designed railroad yards on the prototype. You're going to have a sidebar by Jack Travachino, who literally schedules every train that runs on New Jersey Transit and bases that schedule on manipulation of equipment in yards. So that these are seasoned professional railroad veterans that do it in real life. And you're going to get a behind the scenes look at how they see yards and why certain aspects are important. I don't think that's ever been covered before in print.
So when you were
for the modeling community.
So when you were writing this book, who was your target audience? Was your target audience the beginner, or was your target audience the veteran, or was your target audience everybody in between? Like, is it, if a beginner buys this book, which I think would be, it sounds like it would be ideal, but if a beginner buys this book, is he going to be overwhelmed with too much information, or is there some track plans in there for building simple yards? And, you know, like you really can't build any yard in HO scale to its actual size because there's just not enough room. But are there some track plans in there for some simple yards and things like that?
Absolutely. And I'll know more when I see the final proofs. Again, you know, they put the images together, but I'm going to lean hard on making this accessible. And my target with all of what I do is the community of model railroaders and the community of railroad enthusiasts. I believe that we can do more together than we can as the sum of our individual accomplishments. I firmly believe in the power of community to make things better. And I there's no better example in my mind than model railroading. So my target absolutely is the dead center. And it's a tricky thing to target because you're going to have nitpickers on both sides. You might intimidate people that are just getting started. You might bore the people that are experts. This book is going to challenge those viewpoints. I believe that this book, the last chapter, firmly will challenge a veteran model railroader to philosophize what a yard does for their railroad and how it can build a community in and of itself. There is nowhere on any railroad where the yard doesn't become an intersection for all of the different crafts and goals on an actual railroad. It's the only place where you find mechanical transportation and infrastructure working together on a daily basis. And a yard for a short line can be one track next to the main line. A yard on a class 1 is hundreds of miles of track in dozens and dozens of parallel tracks. It's overwhelming for everybody, you know, and we look at those. We've got some great photographs from my friend Matt Van Hattem, who used to draw maps for Trains magazine and is a gifted photographer and himself a rail planner and a rail engineer.
And how do you know him?
I know him through Mark Hemphill and through Rich Wisniewski, of course, because.
And when did you first become aware of, what was the fellow's name?
Matt Van Hattem. Hattem.
I'm sorry, say that again.
Matt Van Hattem. It's VAN and then HATTEM.
Okay, so how many years have you known him?
I would say probably 8 or 9 years.
Okay, which goes back to our discussion of. Every time I think of it, it just kind of blows my mind that Tom Schmieder and Ralph Heiss and Rich and Doug Watts were all out there operating, and you were like standing on the other side of the freeway wall going, "What's that noise?"
Yeah. Yeah. And in the meantime, I was desperate for connection within the community. And so when Rich and Al Tillotson, who both right-hand people here on the OC, regular operators and people I depend on for management capacity at the OC on a regular basis, those guys started to come, and Al Tillotson was a name I recognized. He has a bunch of pictures published in books in the 80s from Kalmbach Media. It was, Kalmbach books at the time. But he's a gifted photographer all over the Northeast. I mean, another family man like myself. He's got 2 girls that are now out of college and have their own, their own regular lives. But Al is a humble and generous guy, and a grade A photographer. So he's been a huge resource with stuff like this. There'll be a couple of his images in this book. But Rich Wisniewski, who works with consultants for years, and he's been a railroad planner for many years. He ended up working he got to know Matt Van Hatten because Matt did the maps for Trains magazine for many years. Matt, just an encyclopedic knowledge of railroad routes, terminals, interlocking layouts, and yards. And Matt, as an industry insider, working in the industry for consultants, ended up working for Mark Hemphill. He worked for Mark at Trains magazine when Mark was the editor. And Mark is my buddy that I met through my passion for the Rio Grande. So I reached out to him early on when he was the editor at Trains, and we talked a little bit, and I've told that story.
Sure. And how long have you known Mark?
I've known Mark since the 80s when he was first known of Mark. But the first time I met Mark was about 2016, 2017.
Okay. So what was the year that you met Rich?
I met Rich my first day at NJ Trains.
Better question is, what year did Rich come to your house for the first time?
2012.
This whole thing is bizarre. I was listening.
You can't make it up.
Listening to Fireside number 18, and we were talking about it. And because I want you to help me with doing these, Rich, I want you to help me. Rich, I want you to help me. I want to stay with this great operating great layouts, and I want you to help me with this. But because we got 4 guys that have operated just about everywhere for the last 3 or 4 decades, and you literally show up on the scene 12 years ago, and you're an absolutely avid model railroader, and you're, like we said in number 18, you were standing on the other side of the freeway wall, and you could hear the noise, but you didn't know where it was.
Yeah, I mean, it just goes to show that we can all still be surprised. And in my opinion, we can all still, suddenly come into something that changes our perspective on the hobby. I think it's a very, very exciting thing.
The thing I've learned,
the
thing I've learned to do in the last 10 years is slow life down and realize that the days that seem like there's nothing happening, it's just another day towards the next time something does happen.
If you don't stop, it's almost like that Ferris Bueller quote. Remember, if you don't stop and look around once in a while, or life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and look around once in a while, you can miss it. And it's a really important point. Like every day has an opportunity for you to connect with somebody else, or to relax and rest and ready yourself to connect with
I think that's
else.
The big thing. People think that they're bored, and really what they're doing is they're just resting until the next thing happens.
Yeah, I have not been bored in many, many years.
That I believe. So when is the final proof come? When do you see the final proof for this book?
Any day. I was told early May.
All right.
So it should be any time.
So then we gotta the next Fireside chat. We gotta talk about the final proof, because then we're closing in on it.
We're closing in, but Lionel, I'm excited. This book. Now that I learned what I wanted to do the same way and what I wanted to change after the first experience, and I knew going into this one that I had a little more leeway in certain spots and I needed to be a little tighter in other spots. What we're creating here is very special. And it's not going to replace Andy's book. So when people find Andy's book, or they've got a copy of Andy's book from 1990 or 1989, still a relevant book. There is some that I've drawn from that book and included in this book because I think it's important, salient stuff. Some of the basic track plans, for example, are included from Andy's book. One of his articles about being a yard master for the first time on a model railroad. How do you approach it? He's got a wonderful column in Model Railroader from about 2008, if I'm not mistaken, from his operators column. Remember the operators? And he did an article on, what's it like to yard master, and he did a little schematic. I asked Kalmbach to reprint that in its entirety on a whole page as a sidebar, because that column is such an important thing to reinforce people's understanding. In our last operating session here, Ralph Heiss yard mastered by himself for the first time, assisted by Jerry Diedzik, who was the yard crew. And Ralph early on stressed himself out.
But
which is what happens.
Well, sure.
It's operations, right? And worked himself through it, asked the right questions, and delivered. And the yard looks great as I'm sitting here discussing it right now. That's what operations is about. It's about overcoming the challenge to make sure that you're still delivering the best you can. It's a team approach to problem solving, and it's a lot of fun.
All right.
And this little article does a great job, so it's included in.
So this is going to be this will be our last subject about the book, because we have other things to talk about, and I'm asking this question purposely to create discussion. Remember the first time I came to your layout and I irritated you because I said after an hour I was ready to go home, and you were like,
you said that after the session.
Yeah, after the session. Yeah, we were sitting around, and I said after the first hour I was ready to go home.
Well, yeah, but so is everybody after an operating session for a first hour, because nobody has any idea where
exactly. But okay,
it didn't really annoy me. It just it told me I had an effective operating session. But I wasn't able to articulate that in a way that I think. So we had a heated
discussion, and this next question is similar to that in order to promote discussion. Okay. Now that Kalmbach has been sold to Firecrown Media, are you serious? Like, do you think this book will ever even be published, or is this just going to end up on somebody's shelf as an unpublished script, and because Firecrown Media is not going to be interested?
I worried about that, and when this announcement hit, it blew my mind. I mean, I knew that Kalmbach was not putting their full resources into Model Railroader Trains, into the railroad brands anymore. That had been clear, I think, for years. We'd all discussed it ad nauseum. There's no question that Model Railroader today is not what it was 15 years ago. And that's not what it was 10 years before that. So no question that there was some problems that were on the, dark clouds on the horizon here. And when the sale was announced, I heard it from a friend first. I emailed Eric right away, and Eric replied and said, "Yeah, Dave, this is why I've been a little distant lately. We knew something was coming." He's like, "But honestly, I didn't know. We didn't know until the last 24 hours that this was it." And I thought to myself, "Oh my gosh, like that's a huge change for someone that's worked at a company for their career, or for a decade or more, or whatever. And suddenly the ground shifts underneath you. It's like when a family member dies. It's a big change in energy. And when it's your family's primary income, it almost is a family member, passing away or what have you. It's a tough thing to overcome. So, I didn't want to ask right away, and I waited a couple of days and read the news releases and tried to get my, as much information as I could. Then I reached out to the editor for the book, and he confirmed that, yeah, there's a lot of chaos. You can imagine there's a lot of things moving right now, but we've received word that all current projects will be seen through. And I feel like that's a good indication. So you should have the proofs by mid-May. And that's how that whole discussion went. So initially I was scared because, boy, you put a lot of time and effort into these things. I mean, you never make money on a book if you look at it on an hourly basis. But this is important for the hobby. And, if Kalmbach had decided to bury it or Fire Crown decided not to print it, it's something I would have looked at my contract that I signed with them years ago and found a way to get it back so that I could publish it with somebody else.
Right.
Even if it was myself. Like there's too much good information here, too much for the hobby to gain for this to sit on a shelf someplace.
So without telling us anything you don't want to disclose, like have you had many discussions with Eric White about this whole, does he know where he's going to be living, or?
At this point, they're leaving things in Wisconsin, and they're going to do a lot of remote work. There's still going to be a warehouse in Wisconsin. My understanding, there'll still be an office in Wisconsin, not the current office and not the current space. But my understanding is that Fire Crown at this point, part of the transaction was to keep everybody where they are for now, and until further notice. But this is one of the things you look at. You look at publishing companies anywhere in the world right now, and a lot of the work is able to be done remote.
For sure.
So there's a good chance that people that want to stay in Wisconsin maybe could stay in Wisconsin. So I don't know that any of that's been hammered out officially, but it does sound like the new company is working with the current employees, and that it's going to be, we're going to recognize the names in the Model Railroader brand going forward. It sounds like they have very big plans for trains.com. They want to make that a even bigger online presence for the hobby and for the industry, which is interesting because Fire Crown Media does a bunch of magazines about aviation and freight shipping, trucking.
They have. So our buddy Chris Wayman, has he been to your layout yet?
He has not, and we've talked about that. And Chris, oh boy, that there might be a confluence when Chris and I get together at either his railroad or mine.
But anyways, so Chris, because we were having a discussion on Viewer Mail 114, and I said, "Hey, there's a picture of a U.S. Express truck on the main page of Fire Crown Media," and he says, "Well, Fire Crown Media was started by the son of one of the guys that started U.S. Express."
Correct.
I wasn't asking you I wasn't asking you to verify. I'm telling you. I'm not asking you. I'm telling you.
And I'm telling you, you're right.
And
you know me. I'll tell you if I think you're wrong.
That's
too.
Excellent.
But you're not. You're right.
But the thing that Chris pointed out was one of the first things that I think his name is Craig Fuller. Of the first.
That's my understanding.
One of the first things he did was, I believe it was 2016. He started Freightways, which is all about moving goods across the country.
Correct.
And they have this fabulous website all about freight and the chain supply, supply chain professionals and organizations that, move stuff, with real-time information. And it's fabulous. I mean, when I first heard that Kalmbach was sold, I thought, yeah, well, as the lights slowly sink below the surface for Model Railroader. But over the last couple of weeks, I've come to think to myself, I don't know. I think this might be exactly the opposite of the lights sinking below the surface.
Well, and I think, again, it's all speculation at this point. I think Craig Fuller saw trains.com as an opportunity because it's a very recognizable brand. And as we've talked about for years, Trains and Model Railroader, those two brands are the biggest brands in the hobby, period. Walking away. And those brands have value whether Kalmbach lives or dies because they can be sold like they have been now to this new operator. I think when you look at supply chain management, the mode almost doesn't matter. The whole idea of intermodal transportation, containers and trailers on flat cars or ships or trucks or trains or whatever, is that to the customer, which is the shipper in these cases, most of the time, it doesn't matter how it gets there. They just want to know it's going to get there. They want to pay a price, be given a time, how long it's going to take, and be assured that it's going to be arriving when it's supposed to get there. And that's it. Some stuff can take 6 months to get there. Some stuff needs to be there in 6 hours. But the customer is willing to pay for that difference. Customers that need it there in 6 hours are willing to pay, in general, a much higher rate because the cost of goods is much higher than the customer that can tolerate it taking 2 weeks or 6 months or what have you. So what FreightWaves does with this whole supply chain management, which is the 80s term or the 90s term, and then logistics. I remember everybody remembers the UPS commissioners about logistics, like that word is how you coordinate transportation services to deliver a good or a service to a certain place at a certain time, which is the railroads are a huge part of that. And what FreightWaves has done by acquiring trains.com and all of the other brands that go with it is they have tapped into the railroad industry, which is the first time they've looked at it. But I think this guy loves transportation. This is the first time trains, model railroader, classic trains, etc., are going to have an owner that loves transportation in a generation or more.
Yeah, honestly, I mean, if you look at it that way, you could kind of say that model railroader and trains is kind of getting this generation's or this time's Al Kalmbach.
Yeah.
Like I think,
correct.
I actually think that this is like, this guy went, wow, they're selling this? Yeah, I'll buy it. Sure.
Look, it was time for a fresh approach.
Yes.
From the strategic level with these magazines, both of them.
Yeah.
And I think Eric White is the timing could not be better, in my opinion, for Model Railroader with the staff they have. My understanding is there's even talk of growing the staff. The Fire Crown may want to add a few people to the staff and take some chances. And so that's, again, who knows, right? I mean, we're all going to wait and see. But it's a fascinating time. And I'm going to argue that it's a really exciting time for Model Railroader and for the hobby. Yeah, it
could be, because you go to Fire Crown Media's website and everything other than the Kalmbach stuff, because when you click on one of the Kalmbach magazines, it just goes back to the old trains.com, and that was always full of ads, but everything you click on Fire Crown Media is top notch. Like you go to sport fishing and it goes to the sport fishing page and it's top notch and it's laid out extremely professionally, and you go back to, fly in or something like this. And I mean, everything, aviation consumer, and you go to that page and it's laid out extremely professionally. I mean, if that's what they're going to do with Model Railroader, like, I think people are just going to go nuts for it myself.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. And again, the proof is in the pudding. We'll see how things go. But you find that when, there's two ways that operations can struggle. One can be from a lack of morale, and that usually comes from the top. Morale is something that's established by senior leadership. They provide the right resources. They justify when there aren't the resources to provide, but they can still mobilize the right group of people to feel a certain way. The other side of that is just complete apathy, where the people at the bottom have been pushed so far they don't care anymore. I don't think we're to that point with the employees at Kalmbach. I think the employees at Kalmbach are people that love what they do. And look, there's, again, the proof will be in the pudding, but I'm going to argue that if you give people that love what they do an opportunity and the resources to show what they can do, you are going to be surprised at how good things can get. And I firmly believe that we're going to see some of that here in the next couple of years. I really believe that there's an opportunity here. Is it going to last forever? Who knows, But I do think that with Eric at the lead of Model Railroader, there's a real opportunity here to grow something very, very special. Maybe even take the magazine in a new direction that we don't see, and that we're going to be amazed by.
What was I going to say? Don't tell me. I was going to ask you a question. I can't remember what it was now. Oh, well. Couldn't have been that good. I was just clicking through this while you're talking. I'm looking at Firecrown Media's everything they do on their website. Like, don't you find that, like, I've kind of started thinking about this already, and I think you and I have talked about it. It's like, if you don't have a fantastic internet presence, you're falling behind at warp speed.
Yeah, you're falling behind standing still.
Yeah. Because
the rest of the world, and this is why I maintain several different presences online. You know, for what the OC is becoming. Look, the Facebook page fills some roles, the blog fills some roles with the improvements that you recommended that I made. Being a regular here on the old AML fills part of the role. Publishing this stuff with other websites like trains.com fills part of the role. This is all part of the whole rolling idea. The Patreon page fills a special role, the behind the scenes stuff. If you want to see how the Onondaga Cutoff works, if you want to know some of the tricks and some of the strategic stuff that I think about when I'm doing this, that's the place for you. And that's over on the Patreon page and Onondaga Cutoff. So there's different ways that I think we can all contribute this stuff. But people that have a model railroad, guys, other people are interested in what
I know.
doing.
I love
it. Doesn't matter if it's a one-track plywood Pacific Railroad. Set up a Facebook page.
We interviewed Todd Treaster, which is just it came out a few weeks ago. The first we took.
Yep. Yeah, it was a great interview. I thought it was fun.
And he didn't have a Facebook page. And I'm like, you got to have a Facebook page, Todd. People want to see what you're doing. Like everybody wants.
And sure enough, he finally started it.
Yeah.
And I think he's having fun with it. I'm seeing regular.
I know. Yeah. He's having fun with it. And it's making him people more aware of who he is and what he's done. All right. We're running out of time. I wanted to ask you about your visit to the West Coast, the layout you went to there. But we don't have time for that because I have something else more important that I want to talk to you about. Well, actually, I have two things I want to talk to you about. Let's do this one first. I don't think I can do my actual walk this year, the 100 kilometers in 5 days.
I think that's a wise decision on your part.
I haven't decided 100% yet, but I don't think I'm going to be physically able. Mm-hmm. But I really hate turning my back on the hospital. So I really want your honest 100% unbiased, completely honest opinion of this, because I'm trying to think of ways. Well, how can I stay and keep going and blah blah blah? Because this all goes to mental health for cancer patients.
Mm-hmm. It's an important cause.
It is.
Yes.
I was thinking for fun for this year, just because this year I would take a public transit. See if I can take public transit all the way from. I'll still have to walk some parts of it, a little bit of it, but I think I can take different kinds of public transit and actually get from the front door of the hospital to the front door of my house.
I think that is a fantastic idea, and I think you might want to talk to Go Transit as part of that.
Okay, yeah, they'll be part of it for sure.
That's very exciting. I think it's a great idea. I mean, look, like we talked about, I think there's a younger generation that is quite comfortable not having a driver's license, doesn't particularly feel they need a car, and wants to live in an urban area and take mass transit. They want to model light rail. They want to model subways. They want to model commuter trains. They want to model Amtrak or Via. And Bachman and Rapido and Athern are starting to deliver high-end models of these trains. It's incredible. It's incredible. So what you're doing here is tapping into some of that energy. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, just because I don't want to give up on the thing. I don't want to give up on the hospital, and they would really...
Well, that's what mass transit's for, my friend.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
It's for people that refuse to give up.
That's a good point. Good point. Because out of the front door of the hospital, I take the subway down to Union Station. Then I get on the subway and I take it up to where it ends. And then I get on TTC buses. And then I take them so far. And then I get on the York County buses. And I take them so far. And then I get on a GO train or GO bus. and I can take it part of the way, and then I have to take a city of Barrie bus, and then I have to take another bus that goes actually through my little town. So it's like it's gonna take me more than a day. It'll be like I'll do it in 2 days or something like that. But I just thought, well, that would be one thing I could do. Anyways,
there is a whole subset of people. Some of the younger interns at Transit actually have YouTube channels where all they do is post videos of them riding transit.
well,
There was a couple in New Jersey that rode the whole system and made a whole video montage and got 1 million watches or something like that. There's a whole subset that loves what you're talking about.
but you got to remember, not everybody that donates to this cause is a model railroader.
Sure, of course, but they believe in your cause.
Yeah.
And I think this is a great way to segue the two together. I think it's a great idea.
All right. And final subject. Have you had any interesting visitors to your layout lately?
I have. As a matter of fact, just this past Saturday, the president and chief executive officer of NJ Transit accepted a standing invite from a while ago and came to the OC operating session Saturday night. Kevin Corbett of NJ Transit was in my basement and part of an operating session.
So New Jersey,
absolutely surreal.
Did he bring any Rapido trains?
He did not bring any Rapido trains, but they are your fast track to model railroading fun.
If it's N, if it's H-O, the fast track is Rapido.
So New Jersey Transit comprises of the rail side, the buses. Is there anything else that they do?
Yeah, the bus has they call it surface transit now, and it's bus, and then the light rail. There's a whole light rail system as well that is managed under the bus operation side of things. We also have an access link, which is a small specialized bus for people with special needs. And there's a corporate basically under the NJ Transit Corporation, there's a corporate department for procurement, accounts payable, human resources, and engineering.
And this fellow is the president of the whole organization.
The whole shebang.
And how did this all come about?
Kevin is a guy that I've met a couple times at different projects I've worked on and events. The current governor of New Jersey is very big on mass transit, has put a lot of effort and time into New Jersey Transit, especially on the rail side, but the whole company really from top to bottom. Kevin he's a president that you run into. He loves to be at field events. He loves to tour the system. He loves to ride trains. In fact, he rides a train every day down to the office from his home up in Mendham. He drives over to Morristown or Convent Station and basically takes the train all the way to Newark, like 5 days a week, which is pretty exciting. Rides Amtrak to Washington, D.C., rides the buses around sometimes too. He's a very affable, friendly guy, very down to earth, and one of these amazing steel trap memories that never forgets a name or a face. He'll see my kids, who he met among 2,000 people at the annual Family Day celebration down at the Meadows Maintenance Complex, the big locomotive shop, car shop. And he met my kids there years ago, and he came in and said, "Hello, Susie. Hi, Teddy. Hi, Pete." Like, he remembers my kids' names from meeting them among thousands of employees' families. He's just got that gift. He's amazing.
So he takes the train into Newark.
He takes the train into Newark on the Morrison Essex line.
You're supposed to say Newark, aren't you? You say Newark. I say Newark.
Newark. Water, orange.
Okay. So all right. So how did this? Okay.
He was on the 40th Anniversary Express with me, Rich Wisniewski, Rich's assistant Adrian, Jack Trabacchino, my right-hand guy here on the OC, and one of my best friends, really my best friend since 5th grade. Do
you think
we were all on this train together?
Do you think we could get Rich on here to tell?
No, I don't think we can.
So you guys are all on the train together.
Yeah, we're all on the train together. And then you wonder why Rich gives you a hard time. What country do you think this is, Lionel?
Well,
yeah, okay, you're having a good day. That's good. So, so we're on this train together, and I don't remember who brought it up, but someone in the presence of we were sitting in the PRR 120, the one of the private cars, and I was describing one of the bridges we were crossing, on the trip on the way south, and the president of Conrail, the chief operating officer of Conrail, the legal counsel for Conrail were sitting talking to Kevin Corbett, and then his direct report, which included the head of the railroad operation, Rich and myself were there, and somebody, I think it was the head of the railroad of transit, mentioned to Kevin, "Oh, Kevin, you think he knows the rivers here? You got to talk about his own model railroad." And Kevin says, "Oh, you got a model railroad? That's great." I said, "Yeah, we talked a little bit about it." He says, "Well, I'd love to come see it." I said, "You would be welcome anytime, sir. You let me know when you want to come. It could be a private visit. It could be an operating session. Like I think it's more fun when it comes to life, when everybody's there." I said, "Jack and Rich would be there." And Kevin's like, "Oh, that'd be great. That'd be great. Yeah, we'll definitely talk about that." And I said, yeah. So the day went on. It was a great day. And I figured that was just a nice, friendly, congenial acceptance by Kevin. And then, we talk about it again, but it would be what it is. I'll be darned if 2 weeks ago 2 weeks ago I didn't get an email from Kevin's secretary saying, "Dave, Kevin would like to know if we are still on for your May 11th gathering at your model railroad in your basement. Please let me know if Kevin can still attend. He'd like to come and be part of dinner if that." And I said, "Oh my God, this guy remembered from September last year,
Right.
this discussion."
So did you actually say May 11th when you were talking about it?
I mentioned it'd be a second Saturday, that we usually try and do the second Saturday, and we definitely do one in March or April, and then we do one in May. And he said, "Yeah," he says, "Well, I'm pretty busy in April because he's actually a sheep farmer.
Oh, really?
He has probably 24 or more sheep at this farm, and that's his hobby. That's one of his side things that he does. Brilliant guy, U.S. Naval Academy graduate, and a merchant marine, which is basically a freight operation for the blue ocean shipping in the United States. And those boats become government Navy vessels to move freight in the event of a war or congressional action. So it's an interesting little subset of the U.S. Navy. So he's just one of these guys that has always been part of the operation. He's always been sort of a rough and tumble guy that can roll in the field with people doing the work. And he remembered that discussion, reached out. "Oh, are you still doing that operating session in May?" "Yes, sir." I'd love to come. "You are, please." And I sent him the little introduction sheet, and he pulls up in his car right on time and was part of our briefing. I put it over on the Onondaga Cutoff Facebook page because it's in hindsight, it's one of those surreal moments. I still can't believe it actually happened. Right. It's wild. So now I've had the chief operating officer of Conrail at the time, years ago, and now the president and CEO of NJ Transit have come to operating sessions on the OC. You can't make this stuff up. It's great. It's great.
Well, it really is. And so did he participate in the actual?
No, absolutely. He had a pilot for his first train, and he went around with one of Jack's employees at the time, and he talked with Rich, and he talked with me. He talked with my wife and kids. He had a beer with us. He was impressed by the signal system. He wanted to talk about how the yard worked, and I mean, he was just interested. One of these guys that really genuinely enjoyed seeing the model railroad. He walks in, he starts taking pictures. He takes a video, wants me to say hi to his wife, and he sends the video to his wife, and then he sends it to. He's like, "Oh, I got some friends at other railroads. They're going to love this." He starts texting his friends, and it was surreal. It was surreal.
Very it's surreal in a cool way.
Oh, I mean, Lionel, this is 30 years ago. I don't think you would have seen the same interaction. The walls between the hobby and the industry are changing. Railroaders have to be safety conscious. We have to be professional. We are not working for the railroad to sit and take pictures of trains, or to write train stuff, or to talk trains, or have slideshows. But the passion for railroading can transcend your professional responsibilities and your hobby. And so as long as you're able to separate those in your mind, don't be videotaping yourself at work. Don't be doing Facebook posts while you're at work. But you can build a Facebook post and have it timed to be released while you're doing your job and focused on your job like a professional. So you have to be responsible with it. It's not for everybody to be able to do everything well all the time, because I don't honestly think anybody does everything well all the time. But the point is that when it comes to model railroading today, the industry has never been more excited about people that are passionate to work for the industry.
Yeah, it's like they're starting to discover that, okay, like with everything in life, every group, every subject you pick that has people in it, you got your people that are way too far to one side or the other. But that group in the middle, it's like railroads are starting to realize there's a lot of really good gold in that part in the middle, that vein.
Oh, 100%. 100%. 100%. And look, just to touch quickly on the trip to the West, there's a bunch of railroaders that operate these model railroads. You go to Island Ops, right? People that work for the railroad are there hosting you at the West Island Club. I was on the Western trip. I ran into a couple of Mother's Life guys. John Green and I operated on this spectacular B&O Western Maryland layout. We had a great conversation. And as time goes on, there's more and more opportunity to connect with people in the hobby using the power of the internet. And you're going to start to realize that some of those people also are in the industry. Like not the model railroad industry, but the actual railroad industry. And that is, provided everybody does what they need to do to be responsible, that is opening doors left and right. The railroad industry is only going to get better if you have people involved in it that love the railroad industry and that are comfortable being honest about loving the railroad industry. It's a big deal.
It's a huge deal, and it's changing the face of everything.
I definitely want to get into this. And actually, number 20, when we do it, that's a perfect segue. Is when we get to number 20, let's have a real strategic philosophy discussion on the state of the hobby and the industry together. It's changing before our very eyes. We're going to see this turnover in our lifetimes, and it's already happening.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping to stay alive long enough to enjoy some of this stuff, because, and I don't mean that in a morbid way, I'm just meaning that in a numbers way, because there is some really, it is really cool. It's Springfield. We've done it 2 years now, and I mean, it's really cool having your table set up there, having people having the access to it, and people enjoying the podcast. I mean, what we're doing is just, I say to my psychiatrist all the time, I say, you don't understand. Like, you're helping a whole bunch of people here, because the happier you keep me, the more podcasts we do and the more people get to enjoy it. I said,
yeah, it's a powerful, powerful place to be. And yeah, I believe there's room for a lot of this stuff as we keep going. I don't see there being a problem sharing the wealth of this hobby across different venues, different media, different brands. All of that is going to be taken in stride here, because there's a whole new generation that's very excited to be part of this.
Well,
and it's only getting better.
Like I've said for a long time, the beauty of RMC, Railroad Model Craftsman, and Otto Vondrack, and Kevin Udaly, who owns it, is that he understood early on that there was still a place for magazines if it was done properly.
I agree.
And I think what on the other side of the coin, there's somebody else now that understands there's still a place for for these magazines if it's done properly. I mean, when I first heard of the Kalmbach being sold, I thought, yeah, well, like I say, as the lights slowly sink below the surface. But now, in just a very short period of time, I'm thinking, no, I think this guy's serious.
We're going to see. What's cool is we're going to be alive here to figure it out.
And look,
it's exciting.
And look what you and I get to do. I mean, you and I never, ever do anything other than, okay, you ready to go? Yep. And I hit the record button and away we go. And it's just just a recorded conversation. But, we promised each other a long time ago that we were going to try to be as honest as we could on the podcast because it's much more interesting for people.
That and transparent.
Yeah.
Accurate?
Yeah.
When we can figure it out.
All right.
That's for Rich. Rich
is the accuracy.
The rest of us will he can be the accuracy.
Okay, Rich, you got to get organized and get going so we can do some more operating on great layout stuff. And you're going to be the go-between.
All right.
So those guys understand that, because I think
we'll have fun. Hey, it's all about fun. It'll be good.
So can you give out the email address?
The email address is available in several ways. You can go to the website, modlerslife.com.
See, you're not listening. I said give out the email address. That's a pretty straightforward request. I'm not asking you to do anything.
You can click on a picture.
No, that's not your job. That's my job. All you do is give a.
God, you are such a specific guy. I want to raise if I'm going to do this. Right. You just said that transparency is the important.
I actually,
and I'm being transparent.
I talk about my son starting to run the business, and he was telling me a story, and I said exactly. And I invented this years ago when I was trying to explain to Barb, my secretary, who was trying to ask an employee a question, and I said, no, it's C-spot run questions. Those are the questions, and there's only one answer. It may be a yes or no answer, but when you ask these questions, it's C-spot run. Don't let people take the conversation away from where you want. It's did you pick up little Billy at the mall? Yes or no? Well, no. Okay. Where did you pick up little Billy? Well, I picked him up at his friend's house. Why did you do that? So now, just for fun, I'm saying, give me the email address. I don't want anything else. Just the email address.
I already gave it to you. I gave it to you like 2 hours ago.
It's
a modelers. It's modlerslife@gmail.com. And that's modelers with one L like trailer, not two L's like lumber sales.
Nice. That's a good one. And if you didn't catch that email address, if you go to our website, amodelerslife.com, and click on the picture of the moderately agitated mailboy in a particularly agitated state, boom, the address is already there for you, and all you got to do is
listen to this. You're acting like you own the podcast or something here, Lionel.
Well,
I mean, good Lord. Well, you got to know your place sometimes.
The only reason this podcast is any good is because because you because Rich found it and sent you over here.
Yeah, right. But I can tell you, hey, if nothing else, it's always a good conversation on the Fireside chats with Lionel, the evil overlord, and myself. It's always a pleasure.
So this is on the free channel. So if you enjoyed this podcast and you'd like twice as much podcasting a week for just a few cents a day, you'll get a podcast on Monday and Tuesday. And the Tuesday one is the Monday is free, Tuesday is paid, and on there it's a little more behind the scenes. It's a little more sitting on the front porch. It's a little more guys down at the local restaurant having lunch and telling tall tales and talking to each other and just enjoying themselves. And do you ever listen to viewer mail, Dave? Dave's gone.
No, I do.
Oh, okay.
I do. I don't know. That was weird. I'm not sure what happened there, but back we are. And yes, I do listen to viewer mail on occasion.
Okay. Occasion. That's perfect. And if you enjoy Patreon, if you can't afford to do the Modeler's Life Patreon site, then I would say take that money and go to the Onondaga Cutoff Patreon site. Because the second, first, and third Friday of every month, there's a new video that comes out. You know, the one thing some of the stuff you put on the blog, you like to write, man, you should just write some more stuff for the Patreon side because you're a very good writer and it's always interesting stuff.
I appreciate that. And that is something that I do mix up now and again. And I think that's good advice. I will be putting more of those over on the Patreon channel as we go forward.
Yeah. I don't think you need to, and they don't have to be long. It can be a couple of paragraphs.
Nope. No, I agree with you. But it really makes a difference, I think, for people that are reading. I
think the one thing that I do the worst for this particular podcast is that, I don't send out more. I don't write text messages, or I don't write messages to the patrons as much as I should, because I just don't, because I fall down on that particular spot, and I don't communicate as well as I should behind the scenes with the Patreon members. And I wish I did better, but we all wish we did something better.
Well, that's right. And again, it's not so much accuracy. You're transparent about that, and it is what it is.
Exactly. What else do we got to tell everybody? I think that's pretty much it. I mean, if you want a T-shirt, Dave, have you ever wanted a T-shirt with a hot dog on it?
As a matter of fact, I did.
If you go to Midwest Model Railroad, and their URL is midwestmodelrr.com, and go across the navigation bar to Other, and click on the drop-down menu AML Shop. Boom. You're in a wonderland of AML merchandise, hats, hoodies, T-shirts, what have you. What about, can people, I know that Patreon members get a T-shirt. Is there any T-shirts that people could buy of the Onondaga Cutoff?
There are T-shirts you can buy at the Onondaga Cutoff booth at the Springfield, what do they call it? The Model Railroad Hobby Show in Springfield, Massachusetts, every January. But at this point online, there is no available store for OC stuff at this point. But that is something that we're looking into on an ongoing basis. And so we'll see how it goes. That would be exciting.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's it, buddy. I think we're done.
Very good.
Now you ready?
I'm ready.
So remember, a Modeler's Life podcast is considered marginally adequate by 6 out of 10
people that are very excited for the C36-7 from Rapido.
And now it's time for the New Jersey Transit Elevator Escalator Report. Take it away, Dave.
Good morning, everybody. Cranford eastbound's back in service. Plainfield westbound also back in service. Vendor had a good day out there yesterday. Hamilton number 3 is out. We think that one's going to be a brake adjustment, but we're going to check it in this morning. The vendor's on his way. At Westmont, we have the DCA out there today taking a look at the testing on the doors, making sure that the safety edges are back in tolerance after the outage yesterday. Newark Penn Station number 3 is out with a skirt panel reset, and Newark Penn Station number 17 is back in service after a reset this morning.
It's another Lincoln Homer.
Nice. I like, you love that. So how many of those are you going to buy?
Oh man, it could be obscene. Like, to be honest, like it could really be obscene.